Hello everyone, welcome to Lockdown CISWO. Today we talk about U.S. State Secretary Dean Rusk. Personally, the life of Dean Rusk is a good example of a self-made American dream. From a poor boy born in the South, became a policymaker in foreign affairs. Historically, Dean Rusk was in a turning point with the end of the Second World War and beginning Cold War. End of the Korean War and escalation of Vietnam War, U.S.-Soviet global confrontation, and mutual ongoing negotiations. As State Secretary, he was between his predecessors Dean Acheson, John Dulles, and successors William Rogers and Harry Kissinger. Compared to these big figures, and also with his own serenity and habitual low-key style, his years as a state secretary had almost faded in obscurity. On February 9, 1909, Dean Rusk was born in Cherokee County, Georgia. He was the number 4 in the family's 5 children. His forefathers had immigrated from Ireland and almost down-to-earth farmers. Yet his father graduated from college and seminary, wished to be a pastor in church. Unfortunately, he got sick through cancer, which failed him in his career. So he had to rent 40 acres of land for cotton to raise his family. They were very poor, so that Dean Rusk even could not afford to buy a pair of shoes when he was a boy. His mother had been a school teacher, yet the overloaded housework injured her health. In 1913, when Rusk was 4, his father got a job in the post office in Atlanta, so their family moved to a log cabin, and with conditions improved. They lived at the west side of Atlanta, were close to the railroad, with the other side swarmed with farmers and black communities, poor and shabby, even worse. In those years, the racial segregation and discrimination ramped, almost totally separated between the white and black, the poor and the rich. As a small boy, he played with the neighboring black kids. When he grew up, he showed sympathy to the civil rights and racial equality. Yet when his own daughter hoped to marry a black guy, he still denied, and even he considered to resign from the office due to this disgrace. Dean Rusk grew up in the South, and where with traditional respect for martial arts, chivalry, and warrior. And he also dreamed to join the army one day, which possibly made him easily under great influences of the military and balked in Vietnam War. In the South, it had long been dominated by Democrats, and very early Rusk was inclined to Democratic Party. During the Second World War, President Wilson advocated national self-determination, collective security, world peace, and fair trade. Absolutely an idealist. In 1918, for getting national backup for his proposition of a League of Nations, he visited Atlanta. Rusk was just 9. He jostled in a cross with a placard to show his support. It was awful for a kid like Rusk to see personally a great man like the president. At the same year, American Expeditionary Army Commander Pershing also came to Atlanta for celebration. The parade and the high spirit among soldiers greatly impressed Rusk. The early hardship inspired him for success. He studied very hard and kept excellence in performance. Meanwhile, active in sports and school society, such as the Boy Scout and preliminary training. After high school, he couldn't afford for his further study, so he took a part-time job first and enrolled in college 2 years later in 1927 with a scholarship. After graduation from college, he once considered to be pastor, yet finally he chose a path for career success and went abroad to Oxford University, United Kingdom, for the study of international politics and law. During the interview, he was asked how to explain the eagle in US emblem with arrows and olive branches on each side. He answered, "It was the two sides of a coin for keeping power and making peace." During his overseas study in the United Kingdom, he witnessed India's hero Gandhi advocating for India's independence, which brought forth his belief against colonialism and aggression. In Asia, Japan took over China's Manchuria, to which the League of Nations could do nothing more. In Europe, Mussolini in Italy and Hitler in Germany violated the Treaty of Versailles, only appeased by Britain and France. America was rampant with isolationism, unwilling to get involved in the world. When back from Britain, Rusk applied for a job in the U.S. State Department, yet he was denied. So he came to Merritt College, Oakland, California, and later became a well-famous scholar. After America joined in the war, Rusk left school and enlisted in the army. He was ranked as a captain and assigned to Asia for collecting war information. Later, he worked as senior aide to General Stilwell and commander of the Theater China, bomber in India. In 1943, he was promoted to U.S. Department of War and highly regarded by General Marshall. With the end of the Second World War, Rusk showed his antipathy against Soviet expansion and communism, and believing Chinese communists were Soviet's clan in Asia, so strongly opposed to recognizing the Red China and its admission to the United Nations. The 38th parallel that divides the Korean Peninsula was first proposed by Rusk. Japan surrendered after the Second World War, and America and the Soviet discussed occupation zones in Korea. Rusk insisted that an American occupation zone must include Seoul and the two harbors for U.S. Army landing. So there were Anshan in the west and Fushan in the southeast. The 30th parallel then became the border lines between the two states of North Korea and South Korea. In June 1950, North Korea crossed the line and were broken up. And to Rusk, it was communism expansion in Asia and had to be deterred. Rusk was reassigned to U.S. State Department for International Security Affairs due to his insight. He was regarded as confident by State Secretary Dean Acheson and became number 3 in the State Department. His amiable personality and kept him good relations with Vandenberg, chairman of Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and with John Dulles. That his anti-communism avoided his being victim of McCarthyism. In 1952, Eisenhower was elected U.S. president, and John Dulles was appointed as state secretary, and he recommended Rusk as the president of Rockefeller Foundation, an advisor for State Department. After the Korean War and Indochina issue in Southeast Asia became imperative, Rusk didn't agree France's return to Vietnam, yet he also opposed to communism expansion here. He believed Vietnam's Ho Chi Minh was backed up by the Soviet and China, which made it an issue of confrontation between communism and the free world, rather than only the national independence of the Vietnamese. During the Second World War, Rusk has provided weapons and ammunition to Ho Chi Minh's guerrillas against Japan. Yet today, in Rusk's eyes, Ho Chi Minh had become the decline of the communism, which should be deterred rather than appeased. So it dragged America further in Vietnam. In 1960, John Kennedy defeated Nixon as the U.S. president. He finally decided to choose Rusk as his state secretary after rounds of fumbling, which was a good surprise to Rusk, for they didn't have much prior association. Besides, Rusk's annual income as president of Rockefeller Foundation was $60,000, and it was only $25,000 for state secretary. Yet Rusk accepted the offer and got along very well with Kennedy, and compared to Kennedy's charisma and taking the lead, Rusk was quiet and inclined to be out of the limelight. In the end of 1963, Kennedy was assassinated, and succeeding Lyndon Johnson remained Rusk as his state secretary. Until 1968, during Johnson administration, the biggest issue was the Vietnam War. Domestically, America made some progresses in civil rights and prosperity, yet the further involvement in Vietnam War split American society. On August 2, 1964, U.S. government made war escalation with the excuse of the Bay of Tonkin incident. And in the new year of 1968, Viet Cong waged Operation of Tet and inflicted massive casualties to both sides, with the U.S. stationed troops increased from hundreds to 500,000. Besides, America used bioweapons and chemical weapons in Vietnam and ravaged massacre to the civilians, which was condemned and protested in America and around the world. Rusk had been a staunch supporter for Vietnam War, which mostly made him denounced. From a poor boy to a controversial state secretary, Dean Rusk got through Second World War, Cold War, Korean War, and the Vietnam War, which made him a person with manifold characters. After leaving office, he returned to State University of Georgia, enjoyed his teaching and serenity until December 1994, when he passed away. The life of Dean Rusk revealed the success of an American dream and how U.S. foreign policies were affected. Here comes the end of today's program, and thank you for your watching, and see you next time.